Hi, everybody. I'm Lindsay Kane from Tech, and you've joined us for creating an equitable student device experience. We're just going to give a few more minutes for people to join us. We'll get started here in a few minutes. Welcome to the session to everybody who's attending. We're really excited to have you here. If you've just joined, we're going to start in just 1 minute. We're getting more participants coming into the room. So really excited to be talking with you all today about creating an equitable student device experience. All right, I think I'm going to get going. So I'm really excited to be here with you all. My name is Lindsay Kane. I'm the Director of Channel Sales for Tech. And again, today we'll be doing a session on creating an equitable student device experience. We're excited that you joined us for the Tech Virtual Summit. And I'm very excited to be introducing my speaker. The host of your session today is Ari Flewelling, who is a CDW-G K-12 strategist. And Ari comes to us with a ton of experience. She was in staff development at Riverside Unified School District, as well as a technology coach and English teacher at Colton Joint Unified before she joined the CDW-G Ed Strategist team. And personally, for me, Ari is a tremendous resource, wealth of knowledge. And like I said, I'm really excited to introduce her to you all. Just a couple of logistical things before we get going, before I turn this over to Ari. We do have a Q&A section where you can add in any questions that you have as the session is moving on. Please feel free to do that when you have the question so that you don't forget about it at the end. We will do some formal questions at the end, but Ari might also feel so inclined to answer them as the session is going on. So please feel free to do that. Feel free to add anything into the chat, and we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what district or what school you're coming from, and really excited for the session today. So at this point, I will turn it over to Ari.
All right, good morning, everyone. Let's get that screen share up and running. Okay. This one, there we go. Okay. So, and now let me make sure I have the Q&A set up. So presentations over here, Q&A is over here. So if you see me switching sides, don't worry, I'm not ignoring you, I promise. All right, we got the Q&A open and we got, okay, cool. So we'll go ahead and get started. So again, hello, nice to see all of you. So of course, what we're going to be focusing on today is just one aspect of an equitable student device experience, and that is device accessibility. So like Lindsay said, I work for CDW, and here's my contact information if you ever need it. And the slides will be available after the presentation, so don't worry, you'll have all of this info ready and available for you. So just want to go through a quick session outline, and let's see, there we go. Oh, I see the chat, perfect, okay. So first, I just want to quickly address the digital divide, because the digital divide is an important part when we talk about equitable device experiences. as well as why is accessibility important as a part of the digital divide. Then we'll talk a little bit about Google and Chrome, and we'll end with Microsoft and Windows. So first and foremost, what is the digital divide? So I won't read the whole quote to you, but I'll give you a second to read it because it is a little dense. So the things that stick out for this definition of the digital divide in referring to accessibility is really whether we're dealing with physical restrictions or other attributes that might perpetuate inequities in the system. And of course, really what we'll be focusing on today is how to make sure that not only, in this section, we can't solve the device and the Wi-Fi issues, but we can begin to address ways we can make sure that all students are able to access the learning experiences that technology provides. So of course, why is accessibility important? So this is a great graphic produced by Microsoft. So really, it talks about how accessibility, while it is required by over 1 billion people in the world, the different things that can be used with technology really can benefit all. I don't know about you, but I know blue light glasses or glasses with blue light reduction technology have been skyrocketing in sales since we've all been working at home and having to do much more on our computers. That is something that, is actually an accessibility feature for those with visual needs. But as we're all starting to discover, is it's something that we can all enjoy and that we can all benefit from. So this is just a kind of example of just some of the things that are both seen and unseen when it comes to what our students are potentially bringing with them into the classroom. Now, of course, I'm going to show you some different tool things today, but prior to doing that, I want to really talk a little bit about lesson design, just because even if the technology is accessible and usable for students, that doesn't actually mean that they're going to be able to access it properly if the lessons aren't designed first in a format that allows that technology to function. So of course, one way we can approach this is by looking at universal design for learning. So thinking about the effective network, the recognition, and the strategic network. So really the why, the what, and the how when it comes to students and their learning. And in this sense, we want to focus specifically in on the how. So I'm actually going to link out to the CAS UDL guidelines website. So fantastic website if you're not familiar with it. And I'm actually going to click on this graphic. There we go. So this goes through and it kind of shows you the chart of all the UDL guidelines. So today what we're focusing in on is, like I said, this idea of the action and expression. So really thinking on the how. And if we scroll down to the different guidelines and checkpoints, you can see there's vary the modes of response, optimize access and tools. And when we start looking at multiple tools for construction and composition, for example, we can see just a smattering of different tools that really can help our students in the classroom. So spell checkers and grammar checkers, for example, text-to-speech, things like that. Also too, music notation writing software for those that are participating in the fine arts, different sort of manipulatives, whether they be digital or physical, different things like that. So I encourage you, if you're not familiar with the different aspects of UDL, to really dig in, because this can help not only frame your lesson design, but also frame the technology you're choosing to use with your students. So with activity design, just a couple other notes. Of course, whenever possible, have closed captions or access to a transcript. So actually, if I go ahead and do this now and turn that on and allow Google to access my microphone, you can see that there is now a transcript of everything I'm saying at the top of the presentation. Things like this are fantastic to help your audience be able to access what it is you are presenting to them. And if you're recording your presentation, then this is also helpful when students go and play the videos back. Something else that's also important with presentations or assignments is making sure you have a clear structure with descriptive headings and links. So if you notice, every time I have a heading, it's always that dark bold font, and then we use the bullet points to indent points within that. Also, of course, clarifying expectations and making sure you have clear directions and models is always important for student activities. This is important for all students, but it is especially important for our students with special needs. And then whenever humanly possible, have a set of conventions or strive for consistency. So that slide that had that image from Microsoft, as much as I love it, there's always a part of me that's like, ooh, it doesn't want to use it in my presentations just because the fonts are different, the images are different, the styling is very different than everything else in my presentation. So it throws off the consistency. But it's a great image with great information, so I use it anyway. And I ask for forgiveness from the consistency fairies or the folks out there. So, but when you're creating content, you can make sure you have that level of consistency. Themes in Slide Designer are a great option, or in Google Docs, or in Office products using the pre-built heading settings, for example, is another fantastic way to do that. And of course, some additional formatting considerations. When we're dealing with text, you want to make sure that your font is large enough that your audience can read it. So given that we're at a distance and you're watching this on your computer screen, hopefully this is all clear enough for you to be able to see. But if I was presenting this into a classroom, really this 22 to 26 would be the smallest I'd want to have my font. So that way anyone, no matter where they're standing in the room, can see it. Also, I know we love fancy fonts in education, but those can be difficult for students to process. So just make sure that you're mindful of what your students' needs are. And then of course you want to make sure you use bold for emphasis. Think of it kind of like, you want to use bold for your emphasis instead of always using things like the underlining and the italicizing, because again, that visual difference that you're creating for your students. And of course, whenever possible, avoid shadowing effects. First and foremost, you want to avoid light text on dark backgrounds. It can be extremely difficult to read because of the level of contrast. And also too, you know, when we're in the classroom, sometimes you don't know what type of projector system you're going to have. So white text on dark backgrounds can be very hard to read at lower resolutions as well. This is especially important if your students are watching your presentations on video and their bandwidth might not be as fast as yours. So like I said, dark text on light backgrounds work best. And when it comes to effects, it's important, especially on a slide like this, to gradually reveal your bullet points so they aren't overwhelming all at once. And whenever possible, avoid complex visual effects, moving, flashing, dissolving images, swiping. I remember in the OG PowerPoint, there used to be the ability to have your text come in with flames. Don't know who thought that was a good idea. I don't know if anyone ever used that in a professional capacity, but it was there. And then of course you wanted to keep your slide transitions consistent and simple. So before we transitioned into talking about some of the different capabilities of the different systems, I just want to check and see. I don't see any questions in the Q&A, but if anybody wants to take a quick second to pop one in or to pop one into the chat, now's a good time before we transition.
I think we're looking good so far. You did
Okay.
very clear.
All right, so now we're going to get into the tools section. So just so you know, of course, whenever you see this dark maroon text with the underline, that's going to link you out. So in this case, this would take me to, let me log in real quick, or attempt to. Okay, it doesn't want to be my friend. That's all right. That happens sometimes with technology. Oh, there it goes. I wanted it to work faster than it wanted to work. So if you are a G Suite for Education district, there is a short course about using Chromebooks in the classroom with diverse learners. So definitely an option for you to be able to check out. This is something that's available online for free. However, it is not connected with any state certification. So just be mindful of if you're trying to find courses that fit that specific need, but it is available to you. Also, something that you'll get in the presentations is a PDF with accessibility flashcards. So these are some things that I've seen in the past that teachers will print, cut, and laminate. and just have on rings to give to their students. Obviously, we can't do that at this point at a distance, but this is something that you could share with students via your Google Classroom or Google Drive. So that way they have a quick resource to be able to see what some of the features are that they can use. And what you'll notice is this is the Lex Font Family. So this is actually a relatively new feature in both docs and slides. And this is actually the font that I am using in this presentation today. So what it does is it has adjusted the spacing of letters and words to help it, people be able to process as they're reading. And this is an especially useful font to be using in the classroom with our students. It's another one of those things where it's a small change, but it can be a big help to many people when they're reading your content. And as you can see, we have live captions, which I'm currently demonstrating in the presentation, but you can also use live captions in Google Meet. I won't play the videos, but they are there for you to view at the end with the presentation. But the live captions in Google Meet works much like what we're using right now. And of course, you can also do voice typing in Google Docs and in Google Slides. So I'll actually exit the presentation mode real quick. And I have my cursor right now. I'm going to actually do this. So you can see I'm in the speaker notes. So if I go to Tools, I can actually voice type in my speaker notes. So here, and I'll move this. Will it let me? No. So now it should be recording my speech, period. Perfect, it is. So now you can see that as I am talking, it is putting the text in the speaker notes. And when you're done, you just hit the microphone and it will stop. And as you notice, I said period to let it know I was ending a sentence. And you can also say new line to go to the next line. Also, if you notice up at the top, it can detect other languages, so bear with me. I am not a native Spanish speaker whatsoever, but just for demonstration purposes, we're gonna give this a shot. Hola, ¿cómo estás? Ooh, accidentally clicked on the wrong slide. But as you can see, even though I'm not a native Spanish speaker and my accent was probably off, it actually was able to understand me speaking Spanish. And somebody asked if it will translate. Unfortunately, the speech to text does not translate. However, granted, this is not in, if you go to Google Translate, if you enter text here, and if you notice there is a microphone, you just have to make sure you allow it. Hola, ¿cómo estás? So in that version, you're able to, and then you can copy the text from here and put it wherever you'd like it to go. So it's a couple extra clicks, but it would give you that ability to do speech to text to translation. Just that's currently not built into Google Slides itself. But there you go. Thank you so much for the question, Jim. And let's go back in real quick and turn back on my captions. Beautiful. Oh, and even though I showed you the voice typing into the speaker notes, you can also voice type into text boxes as well. Also too, when you're on a Chromebook, you do have magnification tools. So that way you're able to zoom in on small sections of the screen. Since I'm not on a Chromebook, I can't show you that right now, but when we transition to the Microsoft side, I'll be able to show you what the Microsoft magnifier looks like, and they're very similar. Again, also this is on a Chromebook, but you can enable high contrast mode. So that is another option for Chromebook users to enable. So if I fast forward a little bit, can actually show what that looks like. There we go. So if you notice, that is, whoop, that's high contrast mode versus that is not in high contrast mode. So usually if someone knows that that's something that they need to be able to be successful, they know that they need high contrast mode. It's just this is the steps to be able to turn that on. And yes, somebody said in the chat that Google Translate is not always accurate, so be careful. And that's true. Any sort of translation tool out there is never going to be as good as a human doing the translation. So if you end up using that translation in some sort of communication, whether it be with a student or a parent, I always put a sentence at the beginning of the email or at the beginning of the letter saying, this was translated with Google Translate. I apologize for any grammatical errors or any phrase errors, just so that way people know at the outset that I'm not trying to be offensive and that I'm doing my best to communicate the best way I can. But good job reminding us of that. Also, with your Chromebook, you can do cursor highlighting. On my personal Chromebook, I actually do this because the screen is a little smaller than I'm used to. So as you can see, they're going to go into the accessibility features, and that's what that menu looks like. And now the mouse has a nice red circle around it, so that way you can see where the mouse is much, much easier. Highly recommend that feature, even if you don't necessarily need visual features to help with your ability to use a Chromebook. I just know for me, I'm used to working on like a 24-inch screen, and my Chromebook is much smaller, so that's always very nice. And then of course, keyboard shortcuts. Keyboard shortcuts are just fantastic in and of themselves, whether or not you use them as an accessibility feature, just because keyboard shortcuts really help you start to figure out ways you can do things so much faster. So this actually gives you a pretty good list of some of the different keyboard shortcuts you can use for some of the most common things. So definitely worth checking out and seeing what keyboard shortcuts would help you as well as your students. And then you can also do voice typing on a Chromebook. So that way you can talk to the Chromebook and it can interact with different parts of the operating system, whether it be different Google products or things like that. So that's another really cool way to be able to take advantage of that technology. And there is also a screen reader built into the Chromebook. So I know many people look for extensions to do that. And the extensions are good if you're not on a Chromebook, but for students that are, the most stable thing to use is the actual feature built into the Chromebook, since that is built by Google for the Chromebook itself. They do also have select to speak. So select to speak. There we go. So now in this case, they're able to make a box around what they want read aloud, and then now it's going to go ahead and read it. So again, this is another feature that students can use on a Chromebook. One extension that is extremely popular with educators is the read and write extension. So the read and write extension has ability to do text to speech, text and picture dictionaries, speech to text, word prediction. It also helps with ad removal and text summaries. It is a freemium extension, so definitely check and see if your district has a premium version of it. Also, please make sure whenever you're installing a new app or extension that it meets your district's student data privacy policies. You don't want to accidentally install something that your district doesn't want you to use. But this is a great example of an extension that can do quite a lot of different things. And then there is also BLine Reader, which is a reader that uses a color gradient to help reduce eye strain, assist with eye tracking, and it also has a dyslexia-friendly font built into the extension. And another one, this is actually something that I used to help make this presentation, is Grackle Slides. So I'll exit the presentation again so you can see it. So and let's make this a little bit, there we go. So Grackle Slides is an add-on. So they actually do have a Grackle tool for docs, sheets, and slides. I use slides the most often. And again, this is another one of those tools that is a freemium tool. So you either get some things for free, you get additional things if it's paid. So far, I've learned a lot just by using the free version, but it is an add-on. So if I go ahead and run it, please go. Okay, it doesn't want to go. Well, that's fine. That's why we have screenshots, because inevitably technology, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And that's why you always have a backup plan. But what happens when it does behave, it will run a check of your slides, and it will tell you what elements that you have, and it will tell you whether or not it meets the accessibility check. So in this case, the example, it found a shape that didn't have alternative text. And if you click on that, it would actually take you to where the mistake was so you can fix it. So that's actually a really cool feature. Again, a freemium, but a really useful one that I've used quite a bit lately and I've learned a lot from. So before we transition, we'll just double check and see, are there any questions in the chat or in the Q&A? Okay, I'm not seeing any, so we'll keep on going. All right, and actually real quick, just again, so you know, with Microsoft and Windows, they do have a section for special education and accessibility resources. And this is actually, this one is specific for remote learning. So this is another really great tool and another really great free thing for you to take a look at. They actually have different courses underneath each of these options. So as you can see, there's creating accessible content. There's also support for students as well. So that way, this is a resource you can share directly with your students. So definitely check that out, as well as there are other options for second language learners as well as early childhood education, because I know there's not always resources for early childhood. So another good place for you to check out. Again, though, if you're looking for certification hours with your state, this is not a part of that program. So just keep an eye out on that. Okay, so one of the cool things is with Google, I showed you that you could use the Grackle suite to check for accessibility, but within Microsoft, this is actually something that's built right in. So when you are creating in different Microsoft products and different Office 365 products, there's actually a way for you to go ahead and just do this already. So as you can see, it opened a document and it's hiding in review. And there's a button for it to check the accessibility. And it gives you on the right-hand side a different list of warnings. So another fantastic tool that you can use to check on the accessibility of your content. You can also auto-generate captions. Oh, and speaking of which, there they are. You can also auto-generate captions in Microsoft as well. And what's nice is this is actually going to do it for videos, which is fantastic. Now, just be mindful, of course, I'm sure you've noticed this in the captions that it's recording for me right now. The captions are not always perfect. However, an attempt is always better than not having them at all. Also, one of the fantastic things that have been brought to many different products from Microsoft is Immersive Reader. And of course, it's free and it's now embedded in so many different educational technology tools, just to name a few. So this is one of the tips from the Teams video from Microsoft. So when you get the slides, you'll be able to have access to this video, as well as with all of these, I've linked you to the relevant support page. So in this case, this goes on to tell you about what is Immersive Reader. There we go. Ooh, sorry about that. And it also allows you to go through an interactive training and see the various different places it works across different Microsoft products, as well as across the internet. So another fantastic thing for you to be able to use. Even if you're a G Suite user, you may find you're able to use Immersive Reader in other tools because Microsoft has worked with that EdTech tool to add Immersive Reader features in. It's not something that's built into the Google ecosystem itself. Then there's also Office Lens. So this is great for being able to scan different items in. And what's also great about it is you can actually use Immersive Reader with Office Lens. So I think Office Lens is actually a really great tool, especially in a remote learning environment. Google has Google Lens. The names, you know, so creative with the names. But what's nice, and in fact, now you can see on the screen, it's using Immersive Reader to read that PDF. But it's great because with these different Lens products, whether you use the Microsoft version or the Google version, it's really helpful because if a student has to do something in the physical world, it allows them to take a picture of it, convert it to a PDF, and then the students can then send that to you, whether it be in Google Classroom or in Microsoft Teams. So another really useful tool. And then of course there is a presentation translator that works with Microsoft. It blows my mind. This is one of those things where it is that real-time translation. There is also dictation, so that's the speech to text for Microsoft. And actually one other thing I didn't show you, and let me see if I can, I'm gonna pause my recording real quick just because I wanna make sure I do this correctly. One thing I wanna make sure that you know is if your students or yourself are using Windows devices, there we go, whoa. Good thing I paused my screen share real quick. Okay, let's bring it back. If you go in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and hopefully my notifications aren't weird. There we go. If you click on all settings, and this of course is on a Windows-based PC. If you scroll down, there is this ease of access. So you can change your cursor thickness, you can change your pointer size. You can also enable touch feedback. So there's some different settings there. And one thing I also said I would share with you was what magnification looks like on a Windows-based device, since it is kind of similar to a Chromebook. So if you are in your start menu, and actually let's move out of there, there we go. And you go down to, usually actually I just search for it. In fact, it's actually right here on my desktop. It's this nice little icon of a computer with a magnifying glass. I can now use that to zoom in on different portions of my screen. And if I need to change it, I can click on the magnifying glass itself. Right now it's in 200% and it's doing a lens, but I could also dock it. So let's see how that behaves. There we go. So what it's done is now up at the top of my screen, it's a docked version and it's zoomed in based on where my mouse goes. So there we go. Now you can see the captions really large. This docked mode is very similar to what you would see on a Chromebook. And then of course, if you're not into that, you do have a full screen zoom. This one always is a little bit jarring for me personally. My favorite is lens view. So that's another option available to you as well. And when you're done with it, you can just close it. And then now my magnifier goes away. And then let's see. And then yes, you will be able to have access to the slides for the presentation. So that way you'll be able to see the videos as well as get all of the links to all of the relevant information. So in fact, we can just make sure too you get that now, because sometimes we know we're going to get the slides later, but sometimes we forget, or sometimes the email gets lost. So there you go. Links to the slides in the chat. Awesome. There, look at somebody's already in it. Fantastic. Just so while we come to the end, just a couple of things. So of course, I went over just a smattering of different options available to you, whether you're using G Suite and Chrome or you're using Microsoft and Windows-based devices, but you could go so much deeper in this topic. And this is just a sample of some of the different options that are available to you in Otis. So I highly encourage you to dig into this topic, just because, again, like I opened with earlier, so much of this is not just beneficial for our special education students, but it's beneficial for all of our students. And I think given the times that we're living in right now, this quote from the president of ISTE is really important to think about, especially when we think about access and accessibility, because all of our students do have those unique strengths and interests, and regardless of abilities, you know, we know that prior to the pandemic, school might not have always worked for all students, but I think that we have a real opportunity now that we're able to reimagine and rethink about the way we're working in education to really highlight our students' needs and meet them, and then so that way they're able to exceed beyond our expectations. So that's it for me. I'll double check the chat in the Q&A if there's any questions, but did I miss any while I was talking, Lindsay?
I don't think so. No, I think you were very clear, and so appreciate you sending out the slides already.
All right.
So thank you so much for your time, Ari, and for everyone who joined us. This was awesome. I definitely learned a lot and really appreciate your time. And please continue to join us at the Tech Virtual Summit sessions. We have a ton of them. And I don't know if they'll all be as good as Ari, but we can only hope. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you all so much for joining. I appreciate you taking time out of your day to, you know, explore this topic. I think it's one that's near and dear to my heart. So thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.